Hello, everyone. Do you still have some appetite for data? Because there's going to be a lot of data. It's going to echo a lot of what's been said, actually, which means that we did not make it up. It's all true. So let me start. My name is Bilal. I look after travel for Google in MENA. I'm going to just hit you with a few stats in the beginning. Some of them are good news. Some of them are a bit of bad news. I mean, the good news is that lodging is still a big business, right? Especially for millennials. I mean, we've heard a lot about that. The majority of people say it's their largest discretionary spending. So it's a great thing, and it's growing. Now, the bad news is that it's only becoming more and more complex. And we've heard a lot about that already, and we're going to hear a lot about it more. So half of travelers move between dreaming and planning, and we saw that, I think, already. And 1 in 3 plan multiple trips at the same time. And I think that makes our jobs a lot harder as marketers, as agencies, as platforms. It's more difficult to measure. It's more difficult to understand, what the hell is happening with travelers. And that shows, frequently, and it's showing more and more with every research that we do. So that's a recent research that we've done with McKinsey. And it shows how complex the travel journey has become, and it's only becoming more complex. So 36 days from first touch point to conversion, 16 sessions of travel research activity, and 45 touch points, and that's only growing, so 15% year over year versus 2017. And we've had our own challenges in dealing with this, and if you remember back in the day when a travel search on Google used to return 10 blue links, that was okay for a lot of users and travelers, but expectations have changed. Smartphones exploded in usage, and that's why you would see a lot of different, that single user interface, which was the search results, branched out into so many search interfaces, whether it's about flights or hotels or destinations, and it's all about serving that user along the journey and meeting those expectations. So let me just play a video that shows you how does that journey look like today, and how does Google help users as well as travel providers connect with travelers. Okay. So again, just gives you an idea about how different the journey is nowadays with smartphones being so common. I'll be taking you through the travel journey as it looks like today with all of these changes that has been happening. And the thing about travel journey is that we always think of it as like discrete stages, from dreaming to planning to booking to experiencing. The reality is it looks more like this, right? So there's a lot of moving around from dreaming to planning, to booking, back to planning. We've probably been through this ourselves. We would be thinking about a hotel and a destination, and all of a sudden the destination changes. And we're seeing that becoming more and more common with so many signals coming in from different sources when people are planning a journey. But let's look at dreaming first as the first stage. And the great thing about dreaming is that it's literally when no decision has been taken yet. So everything is really still up for grabs. And it's such a big opportunity for brands. Because what the research shows is that only 9% of travelers already have a brand in mind when they are in the dreaming stage. And it only shows you that there's still so much that can be done, so much that can be influenced. And it's a prime time for brands to really establish themselves in that journey. And we see video becoming more and more prominent in the dreaming part of the journey. A lot of people go to online video to narrow down their choices, to select a destination, or even to look at certain brands and certain properties. We see that becoming more and more common as a behavior, again, especially with the proliferation of smartphones. 3 in 5 travelers use online video to narrow down their options, and 2 out of 3 of those searches is happening on smartphones. What do they watch? They typically watch destination-specific videos, so they want to know what activities they can do in these destinations, or even what a resort looks like, right? That's a common search. And the great thing here is that only 14% of this content is produced by brands, which again highlights such a big opportunity for brands to be present in this stage when people are still undecided. They're looking for that inspiration and for that content that can help them narrow down the choices and decide. And Marriott is one of those brands that capitalized on this opportunity. So Marriott hired a VP of content creation, built up a whole function around this. And they teamed up with the Google team to understand what are the destinations that people are searching for the most on YouTube and on other platforms. And which of those destinations does not have a lot of really good content. So they identified those gaps, and they partnered with YouTube creators like Casey Neistat on the right-hand side to create really good content that can help people decide on the destination, get inspired, and figure out what they want to do in New York, in the case of Casey Neistat. So moving on to the planning stage, and this is where we see a lot of heavy search activity, which I'm sure you're aware of it. And when we look at global hotel searches, so we're going to look at different cuts of data, but that's the most updated view on global hotel searches on Google. And we see on average 5% growth between 2015 and 2018. We did see a slowdown in 2018, I think, due to the economic environment, but we still see search as a main point of entry when people are planning a trip. One thing that's interesting is to look at Airbnb versus the most established global hotel brands, and you can see how Airbnb took over Marriott sometime in 2013, 2014, and then Hilton beginning of 2015. And the gap is only becoming wider and wider with time. Probably fueled by a lot of millennials, coming into that age when they're interested in unique lodging solutions. And we see the growth in hotels. So unlike we work with a lot of airlines, and unlike with flights, where the majority of searches are brand searches because you have few airline providers, the hotel space is quite fragmented. You have a lot of brands. In every destination, there are thousands of options. So the majority of hotel searches are actually non-brand searches. So 84% are what we call generic searches, non-brand hotel searches. And again, this shows travelers that are still undecided. They're still looking for options, looking for inspiration, and it's a great opportunity. When we look at hotels in Dubai, we see a slightly faster growth than the global hotel category. So 7% growth year over year on average since 2015. Again, there's been a drop in 2018. I'm sure you've seen it, driven by markets like Saudi and so on. So a bit of a dip in 2018, but that's not only in search. I think that's the industry. And I remember a couple of days ago when we used to present these stats, and I would say something like, at some point, mobile search is going to become bigger than desktop search. And it has happened already in 2017, and today 65% of hotel searches are happening on mobile. We sometimes forget this, even though maybe conversions don't always happen on mobile, but a big part of the experience when it comes to researching, when it comes to planning, is happening on mobile, and we've heard that before today, I think. And when we look at hotels in Dubai as a universe of searches, and we break it down by source market, and you can see here the volume, so where is it coming from, as well as how is it performing in terms of year-over-year growth. So that line is the average growth, a little bit over 0%, so somewhere in the 7%. UAE dropping by 9%, India growing by 27%, UK dropping by 9%, Germany increasing by 5%. I'd love to get some reactions from you. Maybe does that make sense with the numbers that you see in terms of how those markets are performing? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, France is a bit of a weird one. It's popped up, but
it's growing actually, but definitely not in the top 10.
Yeah, it's not in our top 10 source markets, but
we started exploring France for the Bilal brand, especially the one opening up in Greece. It's one of our key targets for the medium term. And then Russia and Ukraine, definitely. India, again, it depends on the product. So we've seen an interest for the Bilal brand again. Then for the Jumeirah product, not so much.
Okay.
Or maybe yes, but not coming from the direct channels.
Okay.
More from a wholesaler point of view.
I think we were looking at TripAdvisor's trends as well. They saw huge spikes in the Ukraine. There were obvious spikes in the likes of China and Russia based on the visa advances. And obviously India, which Karan and I kind of brought up earlier.
I think Russia and Ukraine is a really good sign and opportunity because traditionally those markets would book travel agents.
Okay.
So I think that's a really good trend considering Yandex is obviously their main source. So I think that's really positive and we definitely want to see more of that, I think.
Yeah. And we'll see, I think the next one is, actually before jumping to the Jumeirah brands, again, I think it was mentioned earlier, maybe by Karen, a lot of growth in searches for 3-star hotels. So that category is growing quite significantly in search, as well as immediate last-minute type of bookings. So tonight, today, compared to searches for best hotels, which are still growing, but not as significantly as those mid-tier and last-minute categories. So looking at the Jumeirah brands now, and this is a basket of keywords that's taken from your account, so keywords that are relevant to your properties, and you see how, first, where's the demand coming from, and how it's performing year over year. So Germany, India, France, Kuwait, growing quite significantly. Does that make sense? Again, just to get some reaction from you.
Sorry, what was the question?
Does that make sense with the numbers that you see through your business results? Or is it surprising?
So UAE and UK is down, yeah? Is that right?
UK is down 6%. Why would the US be down 12%?
US is one of the top markets, but in the bottom, the last 2 or 3 markets were not very top. Our main markets, you can see UAE for sure, UK, Germany, India, new entrant, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and the GCC, of course, the group of GCC markets. But India, to see it here, it's almost what we see also as well.
Okay.
Especially in the first half of the year. France, yes, we see a drop again, but the volume is low. The volume is low. And Kuwait, it's a bit, I'm not sure about it because it's almost stagnant.
Okay. All right.
No, we've opened up a hotel in Kuwait and Bahrain, so that's had a little bit of an impact maybe.
Okay.
Actually, for Bahrain, I was considering actually Saudi Arabia. Now Bahrain is contributing a lot to our Saudi Arabia from telecom, from Germany. You can see KSA growing because of Bahrain. I don't see when I see 23% down, it's definitely because of other hotels.
All right. And I'm sure you've seen the hotel search interface on Google. So just to take you through some changes that have happened recently, the experience has become much more visual. There are these quick filtering options to look for top choices, guest favorites, budget options, and the diamond there is the luxury options. And this has become, again, much more visual rich with a smaller map. Don't want to get into a lot of details there, but I'm not sure what's your setup currently. I know you have an integration with Whip, who manages your campaigns on hotel ads. But there might be some opportunities there because, for example, Burj Al Arab, you don't show there. Jumeirah Al Qasr, you're the fourth listing after the 3 OTAs. We don't need to get into a lot of details now, but worth looking into.
But those are screenshots. It may not always be the case, but yeah, we'll be active, and I think we'll try to maximize the opportunity while keeping an eye on profitability.
Okay. So moving into booking, and in booking, we've heard a lot about mobile, and that's what we're going to focus on in the booking stage. And that's a recent Think with Google article that we've published with the Expedia CMO. And we do see this quite a lot. The most common mistake is companies not seeing bookings coming in from mobile and therefore underinvesting, and that becomes a self-fulfilling mechanism whereby mobile does not perform great, bookings are not coming in, and so on. I know it's not the case with Jumeirah. I think you have a pretty good mobile asset, and we're going to cover that in a bit. But we see the majority of travelers currently switch between devices. That's a very common behavior, and we see them making decisions on mobile, but then booking on another device. So mobile is quite challenging to measure and to really understand the value of it. And more than likely, it's underestimated in terms of the value that it's bringing in. So why aren't travelers booking on mobile? 1 in 4 only would put up with a slow mobile site. So three quarters of travelers would literally leave the site if it's too slow. And when we're talking too slow, we're talking about a battle of milliseconds. It's not about whether it loads in 10 seconds or not. And what the research shows is that every 1 second of speed and loading time delivers up to a 27% higher conversion rate. So that's based on a study which we've done a couple of years ago that covered thousands of performance websites just to really measure the importance of speed and the impact of speed on conversion rate. So when we look at the Jumeirah mobile site, and that's a public tool, by the way, it's on thinkwithgoogle.com/testmysite. It loads in 6 seconds on a 3G connection, which you can see on the left-hand side, which is fair. And you can see the spectrum of benchmarks here, all based on travel and tourism companies. So that would include OTAs, obviously. I mean, they're usually the best practice when it comes to mobile site. And it's not easy for a luxury hospitality brand. You guys have a lot of rich visuals, and these things take time to load. But it's good to see where you stand. I mean, you're between fair and poor, which is not great. And there's definitely a lot of work to be done there to make it faster. It's estimated that you're losing 24% of visitors due to the slow loading speed of the website. So we've worked with a lot of brands on improving this, and this doesn't only measure where you stand vis-a-vis the industry, but it also gives you a lot of recommendations on how you can improve the loading speed of your site. So Kempinski, for example, is one of those companies that worked with this tool, and they improved their conversion rate by 11% by implementing some of those recommendations that came through Test My Site. And the last one is experiencing. And what's interesting about experiencing is that we're seeing a lot of searches happening in properties. So people would be in their property doing a lot of search. So basically planning more and more is happening in destination. 85% of leisure travelers decide on activities only after having arrived at the destination. And again, I think it's all fueled by smartphones as supercomputers and this last-minute behavior of planning activities. I want to share one video by Airbnb who really understood the value of being close to travelers in destination and leveraged some of the available technologies, in this case, integration with Google Maps, to create a really interesting experience.
What makes Airbnb special? Special is local hospitality, human hospitality. Mobile is constantly top of mind for us when we're thinking about creative. One of the things that's most valuable to us in terms of mobile is the opportunity to tailor our message to the point that it's so insightful and so useful and so relevant in the moment of consumer intent. Hosted Walks allowed us to respond to requests for directions in Times Square, a neighborhood not typically known for providing great local experiences. If I search for directions from the place I'm staying to, say, Bryant Park, Hosted Walks will point out to me all of the local gems along the way. If I pass a location, I get a recording from a host about their experience at that place.
This is a family run shop in the heart of New York's fashion district. It's the spot for vintage couture fashion.
That's what makes Hosted Walks really special, is that we're providing something that these travelers probably wouldn't have had otherwise. 21st century advertising is really going to be about having a dialogue with people about the things that they want. We've never really had the opportunity to do that before as marketers. We're able to take a message and provide it at the time when it's most relevant based on their Google search, based on their mindset, based on their needs, based on the place they are right now.
This carousel is an amazing photo opportunity. I even took my wedding pictures here.
If we can do that, it takes a strategic message and makes it magical.
It's cool, right?
What makes Airbnb special is local hospitality, human hospitality.
And just to end this section on a few interesting search stats from restaurant searches in Dubai. So good news for you, I think. 300% growth in restaurants near me in Dubai. 100% growth in cheap restaurants, maybe not so good for you. There's a lot of demand for ordering food online, and still increases in best restaurants in Dubai. And we can do a deeper dive on this if you guys are interested. Overview on the travel user journey. I wanted to end with a few thoughts and a few inspiring stories on the assistant and the machine learning, just to mystify these two buzzwords a little bit and show you some practical examples of what some companies have been doing. Starting off with a bit more data on the growth in voice searches. So this is a projection into 2020, and that's a third-party study who expects that voice searches at some point after 2020 will overtake text searches. And we see that in our own data as well. So today, through the Google app on our phones, 20% of searches are happening by voice. So 1 in 5 searches is a voice search. And when it comes to travel, travelers are picking up those use cases quite fast. So 1 in 3 travelers are interested in using an assistant, whether it's to book, to search, to plan a trip, and so on. And because of that change in behavior, a lot of companies have jumped on the bandwagon. Accor hotels have launched a Google Assistant. Expedia have done the same. And even small hotels, I mean, you might not be aware of this company, small hotel company in the US who launched a digital concierge. So you can actually chat with a virtual concierge when you are in the destination to ask about what restaurants are in the area, what activities can you do, is the theater open at those times, etc. And I think KLM was mentioned already, but that's again a cool application of the assistant concept in the context of KLM.
Okay, Google, let me talk to KLM.
Hi there, my name is BB. I'm KLM's service bot, and I can help you pack your bag.
I'm going to Kenya.
I'm going to Amsterdam, Geneva.
Shall we start packing? Let's start with travel essentials such as your passport and bank cards.
Yep.
The weatherman says it's going to be chilly in Geneva, so pack your gloves. Pack your toothbrush and toothpaste.
Okay, done.
Make sure you pack enough underwear for 3 days.
All right.
I checked the local weather in Kenya and there's a chance of rain. Make sure to pack a raincoat. Any chance that we'll be hiking in Switzerland?
Yes.
Sunglasses are in the bag. Just don't wear them at night. You're not that guy from that song.
I mean, you could argue this is not going to be used for packing, but it has a nice brand element to it. And the more functional use case of BB, which is their assistant, is also an assistant that can help you book your flights and search for the best schedule and so on. But I just showed you the more fun version. So that was the assistant. I wanted to cover machine learning a little bit. I know it's a buzzword nowadays, but I'm gonna make it really simple, and I'll tell you a little bit of what we're doing about machine learning. Since a couple of years, I think Google has been defining itself as a machine learning first company or an AI first company. And just to explain to you the concept of machine learning. So computing used to be about setting very clear and specific mathematical rules, and the machine would just apply those rules whenever it's faced with a relevant situation. Machine learning is a bit of a shift away from that model, whereby the first step is to actually train that machine. So feeding it a lot of data, in this case a lot of pictures of cats and a lot of pictures of dogs, and labeling those as cats and as dogs. And the ability of the computer in this case is to identify patterns in these visuals, so that even if you serve that computer a visual that you have not served in the past, it can identify that visual as a cat visual or as a dog visual. So the first process is training those computers with a lot of data so that those patterns can start being identified. The next step is testing. So then you start testing that model. Is it working? Is it accurate? How accurate it is? And if it's not, you feed it more data until it reaches a level of accuracy that you're happy with. And that's literally how machine learning works. And there's a fascinating video. If you have some time, you can watch it on YouTube. It's that machine playing Atari. I don't know if you've seen it. It's playing an Atari game, and literally the only rule that the machine was given is to maximize the score. And they leave that machine for 10 minutes, and it would be playing like a 5-year-old, so it would not be knowing what is it doing. But then they leave the machine overnight, and then when they wake up in the morning and the computer is performing in superhuman levels, and the score is like skyrocketing. And the idea is that first the algorithm used to underperform versus humans, and that's back in 2010. But then with the advancement of this science or computing science, we're lately seeing that the machine is actually much more accurate than humans in a lot of ways. And that's the image recognition example. And I'm going to actually show it to you. I don't know how many of you are aware of this. Have you seen this before, this picture on the internet? So there was this picture on the right on the internet that trended. It's a bit like that dress, whether it's blue or green, if you remember that. So the people were debating whether this is Tom Hanks or Bill Murray. Have you seen this? Anyone has seen this? Okay. Do you know who this person is? Who thinks it's Tom Hanks? Bill Murray? So they fed this picture into an image recognition computer, and that's what it came back with. So Bill Murray is by far the highest probability at 15%. Not only that, but Tom Hanks is not even on the list. No, it's Bill Murray. So really freaky, but cool as well. And again, this is fueled by the fact that the computer has access to a lot of other visuals, maybe during the same event, that were much clearer to be Bill Murray. So Bill Murray was wearing this red coat and so on. So it has the ability to create these connections and to make those conclusions that are much more accurate than humans can. And machine learning really now underpins a lot of the Google products, and you must have experienced this yourself. So Google Photos, and this is a screenshot from my own phone. If I want to look for pictures of my son, I just write his name, and then I get all these pictures of my son. If I want to go back a year ago from when we were at the park, I can just write parks, and I get these pictures on the right-hand side of us when we were in the park. And again, all of this is fueled by machine learning and AI. Google Smart Reply, Gmail Smart Reply, you must have seen this. It suggests replies based not only on standard replies that are off the shelf, but based on your own historical replies, which is quite useful. Google Lens, so pointing the camera at an object, it would identify what that object is, and it would surface some relevant information, in this case a restaurant. What are the ratings, what kind of cuisine does it serve, is it expensive, and so on. And Google Translate, of course, and Google Translate at some point, again, it was the technology underpinning Google Translate was all based on rules, and at some point it was completely shifted. They threw away all of that work and code that was developed, and they just applied machine learning to it. And the accuracy improved in 24 hours, like exponentially. And the great thing about these is that it's not only technology that's available for Google. So all of these technologies that I mentioned, Cloud Vision API is the ability to identify visuals, is to interpret visuals. Cloud Natural Language is what powers Assistant, and the ability to understand natural human language and translate it into code if you want to build your own assistant. Translate, so all of these are cloud APIs that any company has access to today to create its own application and its own technology and its own products and services. And I'm going to end with one video of one company in the So that's also a video interpretation engine. I can share some more details about this if you're interested. So I'm going to share just one last video, and that's the last slide of a hospitality company, not a hotel company, but an OTA, a Hostel World, if you've heard of it, just like the Booking.com of hostels. And what they've done is they've actually used a couple of those machine learning APIs and created their own application.
The most valuable customer on Hostel World is a customer that uses our app. We partnered with Google and used their translation technology to create a translation device within our app.
Thanks to Speak the World, you can use it to speak to other people in languages you don't even understand.
Hey Matt, when was the last time you stayed in a hostel?
The algorithm does the rest. We know that a lot of the people who use Hostel World and hostels are solo travelers.
Sociability underpins the entire business, so a translation tool within our app is incredibly useful.
People always say that humour doesn't travel, it's the one thing that doesn't. cross boundaries, and we decided to see if we could prove that wrong.
We chose Phil Wang.
Hi, I'm Phil White.
We sent him to Indonesia to try out loads of his jokes on locals.
Talked to people in the hostel, obviously. He went to the paddy field and basically did his comedy thing, and sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. The app always worked.
Everyone we targeted was in the market for travel, so we have signals of intent. Even if you're not staying in a hostel, you might download the app, and that puts the customer ever so slightly nearer to booking a hostel. We had an uplift of about 114,000 app downloads throughout the campaign period.
Our kind of cost per app install went down about 300% on the back of this campaign. YouTube was the key channel, and we actually spent, I think, 75% of our budget in TrueView to make sure people saw that video.
We can reach consumers who not only love watching comedians, but also love travel documentaries. The number of translations since the campaign launch, I think we're approaching 4 million, which is absolutely phenomenal.
What's great about YouTube is it is the perfect place to showcase the content and get people engaged and inspired and entertained, but then it's really easy for them to then go on and take an action on their phone, translating and booking with hospitals.
Thanks, guys.
So you mentioned in one of the slides that 46% of the people, they make their decision on mobile while they book through desktop, right? How does this percentage look like from SCM perspective? Is it close to 46% as well?
What do you mean by that?
Like how many people?
Because this is based on a survey of people saying that they make their decision when they were on the mobile and then booking on a desktop. On search, we see that 65% of searches are on mobile.
Okay, so how many people they search on mobile and they click at ads and later on they book through desktop? So is there a specific percentage, like a benchmark or an average?
The problem with this is that you can only look at logged in users to really measure this. And what makes this very complex is that the travel journey is just quite long. It's not like e-commerce and retail, where you could be looking for a phone and in a couple of days, you would buy that phone from Souk or whatever. So I don't have an answer for you because the measurement piece of this question is quite complex. What we know is that a significant number of people search on mobile. Probably the decision a lot of the time is happening on mobile, but people want a desktop to enter their credit card details and so on. But we don't have an exact number for this.
Thanks for the presentation. I have a question about the growth of mobile apps, especially as far as travel is concerned. Airbnb app, Booking.com, or Expedia's app. To what extent are you able to measure to what extent users use directly the apps instead of searching on Google, basically? And because from my perspective, I have no clue about what percentage of the bookings made on Booking.com were actually made via the app. Basically, it's kind of a black box to me. I guess you guys have been researching because VC is stealing market share from you when users are not searching on Google but directly searching for hotel brands on a travel app. So do you have a bit of insight on the same?
Yeah, again, I don't have exact numbers, but what I can tell you is that there are different segments of users, and you have that segment that are very loyal to a single app, whether it's Amazon if they want to buy electronics, or whether it's Booking if they want to book a hotel. You have that segment, it's true. I mean, some people probably go directly to their app. I don't think it's the majority. We still see, and we see that because the searches keep growing on Google for hotel, for flight searches, and so on. So you have that segment. You also have that segment who wants to shop around, and that's why we see a lot of uptake in the usage of Google Flight Search and Google Hotel ads and so on. So I think there's always going to be a lot of choice out there for people who want to stick to a single app, or for people who want to shop around on Google and then move to a travel service provider or to an OTA. Again, I don't have exact data there because a lot of it is proprietary to the OTAs. But yeah, we still see a lot of activity in search, and we still see those segments that are very loyal to their OTA brands.
Do you have any idea about the average growth for bookings or hotel bookings on mobile sites for the past 3 years? So let's say it went up from 10 to 20 or 30%, something like that.
As a percentage of total?
No, as a percentage of total, yeah, exactly.
Growth in mobile bookings of hotels?
Yeah, hotels. Yeah.
I don't have a number, because again, this is usually proprietary for the hotel service provider. We still don't see the growth that we would expect in terms of bookings on mobile. But it's not because the users don't want to book on mobile. Most of the cases it's because the experience on mobile is not great. Because phones are becoming super fast, the screens are becoming bigger, travelers are always on the go, and a lot of them would love to book on mobile. But a lot of the cases, as you saw from the speed analysis, the experience on mobile just misses the expectation, and people don't have the patience anymore. And the benchmark now is not, when people are looking at your mobile site, they're not comparing it to the mobile site of other travel companies. They're comparing it to their experience on Instagram, on Google, on YouTube. The expectations of users are set not only by your category, but by any digital experience that they're having on a day-to-day basis. So the benchmark is high, the bar is high, but most companies are struggling to prioritize mobile properly and really deliver that efficient and seamless, frictionless experience.
So going back to your consumer journey of the dream plan book experience, in the dream phase, you said that there's huge opportunity for brands to set up kind of like a vlog or essentially their own video-owned channel. How do you what is the best way to go about this? Because obviously there needs to be some setup. Is it working with the likes of influencers? Is it just creating content on our own? How do we best work with you to start developing this? And then secondly, how important is this as a brand building exercise to best place Jumeirah in the position of, yes, building brand awareness, but also affinity and getting a longer term metric, so less about booking and acquisition and more about lifetime customer value?
Yeah. So maybe I'll answer the second part first. It's extremely important because increasingly, especially with younger segments, the tolerance for typical advertising does not connect with them anymore, and there's not much credibility with the typical old school type of communication. And we see the engagement metrics just go through the roof when it's a genuine content that really adds value to a traveler, either through inspiration or by giving them ideas or by connecting with an individual that they relate to, such as the influencers. So there's definitely a lot of value in having a proper strategy to be present at this dreaming phase in the beginning of the journey and to create those brand connections. And those, in my opinion, are becoming quite essential to create that special brand relationship with travelers. How to do this, I think it really depends. There's no simple answer. I think it depends on what the Jumeirah brand is trying to achieve, what is that character that it's trying to portray through those partnerships. Is it better for, and it's also about the capabilities of the company as well. I mean, Marriott are capable to build up a whole content creation function, right? It's a massive company. In some cases, you might want to opt for partnerships with influencers and third parties. And it doesn't have to be the perfect solution from day one. I think it's good to, like anything in digital, it's good to pilot, it's good to test a couple of approaches, see if they work, go from there. It's difficult to say what's the best setup. It might be partnering with an influencer, it might be having a third-party content creation agency that really understands how to create good content for the digital space. But like anything, I think it needs to start with a vision, with an objective, and then based on that we can explore different options. And we have in Dubai teams who work with influencers. We can reach out to teams who work with global influencers, given Jumeirah is a global brand. And we have people who also can advise on how to create really engaging content for YouTube. So happy to discuss this further.
Cool. Cool. And then I guess the last part of my question then is measurement. So with Jumeirah, we are completely across the Google stack, from DBM, DCM, GA, etc. How do we best utilize your tools that are integrated with our assets in order to determine that this brand campaign isn't showing us those short-term metrics, but it's going to benefit us in the long term?
Yeah, it's a very tough challenge, I think, especially in travel, because a piece of communication today might have an impact in 6 months. So the ability of us to connect that conversion back to that branding activity, I don't think we cracked it yet. But I think there are lots of things that we can do. I mean, whether it's third-party research, econometric studies, media mix modeling studies. But yeah, I think through our own attribution and measurement platforms, I have to say in travel, especially when you're talking about something that's really upper funnel, I don't think we have a very straightforward solution to say that this video that we had 6 months ago contributed this much to revenue. There's a little bit of a leap of faith there that needs to happen. There is a little bit of third-party research that we need to do to better educate ourselves on what is working and what's not.